Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Today let's make a lightning ice dye. The shirt was prepped like normal and I have it turned inside out. This is a design that I saw on Facebook and it was inspired by Jenna Penland. I'm going to draw a line diagonally across the shirt, and the line doesn't have to be perfect, it's just kind of a reference guide. Then I'm going to do some large fan folds in the shirt, but I'm going to go on either side of this line. So I'm going to alternate picking a point on the right side of the line, then the left side of the line, and back and forth all the way up the shirt. Kind of doing a very imperfect zigzag design. The key to this is it does not need to be perfect. Fun fact is that a little over 10 years ago, we had our property hit by lightning. We had a big oak tree outside of our bedroom window, and the lightning struck the oak tree, went down into the ground, into our sprinkler system, and ultimately ended up causing a fire on a building that was on the opposite side of the house as the tree. It was pretty bizarre. It pretty much peeled back the bark on the tree too. So we left the tree standing for several months, but we ultimately had to go ahead and have it removed. After our property was hit by lightning, it's amazing how many people said that they had had the same thing happen on their property. So lightning strikes are fairly common. I love to watch the lightning, but it can obviously be very destructive. Once I have all the folds gathered together, I'm going to go right down the middle of them with a line of sinew. I'm choosing to use sinew because I want a white line. And because the sinew is wax coated, the dye is not going to seep under this line. So where I have the sinew line, that area is going to remain white even after the shirt is dyed. Okay, so when Jenna did her design, she used some sort of a jar, like a plastic container, and I didn't have one of those, so I went to the dollar store and bought a plastic pitcher and just cut the bottom out of the pitcher. I've also taken one of my large plastic containers and placed 2 pieces of vinyl guttering over the top. That's what I'm going to set the plastic pitcher on. I'm shoving the shirt up into the bottom of the plastic pitcher. And then I'm going to set this pitcher on top of the 2 pieces of vinyl guttering. I'm only going to use Nightshade from Dharma for this shirt. And I'm almost out of this container of Nightshade, so I'm going to dump it right on that sinew line, add a little bit of soda ash on top, and add a layer of ice into the top of the pitcher. This is really a brilliant idea because the container that you have the shirt in is also your ice barrier. I did this setup on the shirt probably about midnight one night, and I was a little concerned that as the ice melted, that it would run down the pieces of vinyl guttering and go onto the floor. So at the end of each of the pieces of vinyl guttering, I placed a plastic container or one of the dollar store dish pans. Well, when I woke up the next morning, I noticed that the pitcher had fallen over. So thankfully, just a little bit of ice came out onto the floor and into the dish pan. None of the dye. So I set the shirt back upright and added another layer of ice. After that layer of ice melted, I checked the shirt and noticed that the back side of the shirt really didn't have a whole lot of dye on it. So I went ahead and turned the shirt over and added a layer of dye and ice to the back side. I put the shirt outside where it was a little over 100 degrees and left the shirt for probably about 12 hours before I rinsed it out. I know I normally leave my shirts for about 24 hours after the ice melts, but I have one of the heat guns and I pointed it at the shirt before I rinsed it, and the shirt was registering 96 degrees, so I think it was plenty warm to process properly. I started rinsing in cold water to rinse out the soda ash and to rinse out any of the excess dye that's left sitting on top, because I do have some undissolved dye left sitting on both sides of the shirt. Then I warmed the water up to hot to rinse out any of the excess dye that didn't bond with the fabric, untied the shirt, and when it was rinsing almost clear, I put it into my washing machine along with some Dharma's textile detergent and washed it using a hot water cycle. Then after the shirt was washed and dried, this is what it looks like. Okay, so what do you guys think? I really like this one. I think it looks really cool. I do think it looks like lightning, which was kind of the look that I was going for. That's the reason why I put the line diagonally across the shirt. That's also the reason why I used nightshade. I wanted a shade that was pretty dark, but I also wanted some really cool color splits. And I love the color splits that come out of nightshade. I have several different shades of purple and pink and blue, which I think look really cool on the shirt. I wanted the line to be pretty intense, so I added quite a bit of dye to this shirt. Some of the other dyes that I've seen like this, they don't add quite as much dye, and I think they look gorgeous. But for the look that I was going for on this shirt, I wanted quite a bit of dye. That's the reason why I flipped the shirt over and I added more dye to the back side. I know it's kind of hard to tell from the photographs, but most of the shirt has some dye on it. It's kind of part lightning dye and part gravity dye, because the dye went through the shirt and kind of wicked down to the outer edges of the shirt, which I personally like the look. I didn't really care if there was any white left on this shirt, so I don't mind that the dye kind of went out toward the edges of the shirt. I think it gives it a cool effect to the shirt. But if you want white left on this shirt, well, then I wouldn't add quite as much dye as I did, because I added quite a bit of dye and quite a bit of ice, so it pushed a lot of the dye through to the outer part of the shirt. It also didn't help that the picture fell over and some of the dye kind of moved around a little bit. About the only thing that I would change on this shirt is maybe make the distance on either side of that initial line that I drew a little bit greater. So when I pulled fabric from either side of that line, I didn't go very far on either side of the line. You can kind of see down toward the very bottom of the shirt how the zigzags go further away. I like that look better. Up toward the top, see how they're kind of closer together, and I'm not as much of a fan of that look. So I think this is a really fun technique, and I'm going to mess around with it a little bit more, and I'm going to see if I can space my zigzags out a little bit. See if that makes a difference in the way the shirt looks. I do like the variation though, where they're not all evenly spaced. I think that makes it look a little bit more realistic, more like lightning. So if you guys have enjoyed the video, I sure would appreciate it if you would like it and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.